All right, I am thrilled to introduce Romain Rothier, an accomplished principal platform architect at Zendesk. Thanks for joining us today, Romain.
Thank you.
I've learned quite a lot about you to prepare for this conversation. Really excited to have you, share some of your experience traveling around the world, visiting the Mojave Desert, playing on the Dublin City University volleyball team, and also just working for a great company like Zendesk for so long and building incredible products. So I wanted to start off just with a quick question around, if you could having worked pretty much all over the planet, it seems like, if you could live in and work in Paris, London, Mojave Desert, where would you want to live?
Well, at the risk of sounding unoriginal, I would say Paris. I've been back since 2016, and I really fell in love with the city again. I'm very lucky to be able to cycle to work most days, and I go through some very picturesque neighborhoods. So it's been great so far. And also the Paris office has moved to a great location, the Hotel Bonny. It's a beautiful historical landmark, and it's so much beautiful that my coworkers call it the castle. So so it's very shiny and full of gold flourishes and so on. So, but it's a great vibe, and I love spending time with people there face to face. I think it's really important.
And how about what's your close second?
Well, oddly, it's completely the opposite. So my in-laws actually have a farmhouse in the countryside near Poitiers, and they literally built it brick by brick, like with their own hands. It took them 30 years. I really came in their lives, in the life of my wife, in the later part of it, so I got to enjoy the benefits without necessarily putting in the effort. But it's a great testament to kind of perseverance and hard work, and it doesn't get more secluded than this, so it's really great.
Amazing. So I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but so I worked for Facebook for a number of years, and my boss, Julian, he actually was based in France, and so we're the initial team that I worked with at Facebook. So I actually got to go to Paris every quarter, probably, and it still is and continues to be my top favorite place, maybe in the world. So I love it there, and I'm very jealous that you get to live there.
Thank you. That makes me really happy.
So let's talk a little bit about Zendesk, your time there. You've been there almost a decade, so almost 10 years. Tell me a little bit about your kind of what drew you there, what brought you, and then how have things changed as you've looked at the company's evolving, customer service and technology over the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's funny you say 10 years, but it really felt shorter than this. I think I was originally drawn by Zendesk's promise to deliver a great user experience across all its users. So from the customers that are starting a chat or looking up a knowledge base article, to the customer service agents who are working through tickets all day, and all the way to the administrators who are configuring the product and the platform. So I remember when I joined back in 2015, our mantra was beautifully simple software, which at the time, most customer service softwares were very slow and clunky. So it was a big mantra, a big promise to fill. And I also had a passion for design. I moonlighted as a freelance developer for a while. And so I was really impressed by Zendesk's dedication to product design, which still hasn't changed to this day.
I love the phrasing of that, beautifully simple software. And it's really interesting how often we spend time thinking about, or I should say, like many people spend time thinking about what the experience of the customer looks like, but they don't talk as much about, I wonder what it looks like behind the scenes for that agent who spends all day, that customer support person. And you guys, I think we've been a Zendesk customer for quite a long time as well. And it's been excellent for us, and we've seen it evolve over the years. So I can definitely see where it's been that great type of product.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's often those users that are, overlooked, but they're the one who spend the most time using the solution. So it's really important for them. It's really important to think about their satisfaction, not just the customer satisfaction.
Yeah, that would actually be, I'm sure you guys measured, agent satisfaction, but basically they're your customer. So I guess you're hearing from them all the time. But so, I'm sure you've seen those like TikTok, Instagram videos, day in the life. I imagine, Roma's life working for Zendesk is not quite just hanging out like many of those TikTok videos show. But I'd love to know, as your role as a platform architect, moving through some of these roles from solution consultant to senior architect, what does it look like? What are you actually doing back there? What are you doing? What are you
Yeah,
up to?
that's a good question, because when I tell people I'm a platform architect, they're like, what house have you built recently, or like, and I'm like, that's not really what I do. So, but my day to day, it's mostly two parts. Really, I'm supporting our sales motion. So I'm working with sales account executives, pre-sales engineers, and just the go-to-market teams in general, by providing them technical expertise and best practices on how to integrate Zendesk and customize Zendesk, right? But I also engage directly with customers and prospects. I run workshops to understand their technical ecosystem and their integration requirements. And then I go away and I draw the architecture and the data flows to integrate and customize Zendesk to deliver the most value, basically.
Okay. And maybe my product experience is probably pretty naive with Zendesk. If from the way you're describing it, it sounds like there's a lot of integrations, technical components. So is it more that the product itself is tweaked, or is it more like the tools and the systems it connects to is tweaked, or is it a bit of both?
I guess it's a bit of both. So as I mentioned, our original mantra was beautifully simple, and it is a simple software. So a lot of what you do is point and click, when you create your flows and your views and so on. But that's almost the tip of the iceberg, right? There's a extensive platform that you can use to do a lot of things, to make Zendesk communicate with your back office systems, to automate processes, to extend the data model beyond what's native. So it's a big sandbox, and there's lots of things, lots of opportunities to deliver additional value using that platform.
So presumably you've probably had some, I don't know, challenging, unique problems and experiences with your customers over the years. Any of them that have like really made you work extra hard or had to be extra creative?
Yeah, a few of them actually. Well, I'm mostly engaged on like large, complex opportunities, for enterprise prospects or customers. So so delivering at scale is always a challenge. In terms of recent challenges, I know we had one customer that really challenged us in the past. A few years ago, it was a large gaming and gambling entity that should remain nameless. But they had very complex operations. They had multiple brands, millions of customers, and they had very complex routing and prioritization rules when it came to chat. They wanted to prioritize, obviously, the customers that were spending more and winning more, etc. So, but it went further beyond. So, and I don't want to go into too much technical details, but our product at the time wasn't there yet in terms of complexity. So again, we had to turn to our platform to come up with a very creative and custom solution. But we also had to convince our product teams to accelerate some of the areas of our roadmap in order to make the solution happen. So it felt a little bit like we were, the nail stuck between the wall and the hammer. And I'll let you decide which is which, right? Is the customer the wall, or the hammer? But in the end, we managed to close the deal and deliver the solution. So,
I've only really experienced a lot of the customer support, by calling into a company. Like I have Google Fiber in my area, and I'll talk to them on the phone. or I've experienced, your product through lots of different help centers and chatbots and all these kinds of things. But what does your product do, or like how do you help folks who are in like I don't know, field, I don't know, like companies that have people that are not at a desk? Maybe it doesn't fit perfectly, but like what have you had to do with those?
Yeah, that's actually a very um, up and coming use case, right? Because well, for many reasons. First of all, people that are in the field, whether they're like retail salespeople that are in store, or I don't know, like repair people in the auto shops and so on. They are the ones that hold the knowledge, right? They know where your order is. They know if your car is fixed or not. So you want to be able to get them to support customers through digital channels. But it's not their primary focus, right? Their primary focus is doing their job in the field.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to get them to stand by a computer or answer a chat. Or so one of the things that we did for a big auto shop, kind of auto repair company, is to be able to connect the people making the repairs with the customers via WhatsApp. And we do that through mobile, of course. So the people in the auto shop, they don't sit by the computer, they have their mobiles on, and they receive the messages, and they can also send proactive messages to say, oh, actually, we realized that, upon investigation, there's something that needs to be fixed on your car. It's going to cost extra. Are you okay? And, being able to have that easy communication channel with the customer has really, really helped bring the satisfaction up.
I think that's great because a lot of the time, you try to pull people to where your workflow is, and it may not fit best to them. And as you adapt it to them, they're much happier. I did have a follow-up question to your comment earlier about, sort of having, let's say, once you find the requirements from a customer and maybe they don't adapt or fit into your known product roadmap. I was sort of curious, like, how do you approach your team and try to convince them to adjust or tweak the roadmap? Is that, you come with anecdotes, you come with data, it's like revenue, sort of a mix? You hang out in a sauna and, become best friends with the PM? Like, how have you approached that?
Yeah, I think, a few of those. It doesn't hurt to have relationships with the PMs, like to check in on them, to see how the product roadmap is going for them and so on. At Zendesk, we have standard processes for customer feedback, so we can attach a feedback to an opportunity or an account, and we are going to qualify that feedback. Right? Is it a blocker for the opportunity or for the account? Is there revenue at risk, or is there opportunity to bring more revenue? Of course.
Right.
And then we feed that back through a tool that we use internally. So, but aside from the actual process, typically what we would do is either ping the product team on Slack or the product manager for that feature, and just inquire about their roadmap, because they might have this on their radar already.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Part of the reason I was thinking about it is I've worked for both big companies where the process and sort of workflows are really dialed in. They make sense. They're clear. And then I've worked for startups where like I'm a early sales guy who is sort of like, hey, this person's shouting from the rooftops. And what I would often do, I became really good friends with a couple of the engineers. So one of them, Hanale, he would go running every day. So I'd go run with him. Another engineer liked to go to the gym. And another one, he liked to try to think. We just went on walks a lot. And so I would basically say like, our product team we're not able to build this SSO feature for some big company or whatever. And it would be really hilarious because sometimes the engineer would come to me on Monday and say, hey, I built it over the weekend for you. Go close the deal or whatever. And then our product team would be like, what? Well, where did this come from? But anyway, it's I appreciate that you guys have a well-defined, clear system because that can get a little crazy.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about sort of your technical expertise and some of the customer conversations you've had over the years. So as you mentioned, Zendesk is really known for its customer-centric approach. You listen to your customers, you adapt the product, you make it work well for them, and also really help their customers. How do you view this sort of balance between your technical expertise, this solutions architect aspect of you, and then also being empathetic, being a great listener to your customers?
Yeah, I mean, the role that of platform architect obviously requires technical skills to be able to understand the customer or the prospect's technical landscape, to be able to map out their processes and their integration requirements and so on. But I would say empathy is as critical as technical expertise. I often compare this job as one of a city planner, because I have to explain what I do, and it's really difficult to people who are not in tech. So I say, I'm like a city planner. I'm designing the roads that connect the houses where people live to the office where they work, to the shopping mall where they shop. And, I have to understand how they live, what is most important for them as they commute in and out of those areas, what their experience is going to be, etc. And this is kind of the empathetic part. But I also need to account for technical constraints, like traffic, how many people are going to be on the roads during peak hours, functionalities, and so on and so on. And lastly, one additional challenge as a pre-sales architect, because you have, of course, post-sales and system architects, is that everything you present needs to emphasize the additional value and the benefits that are driven by the solution. So you need a degree of salesmanship or salespeopleship on top of your technical knowledge and skills.
I love how you put that as a city planner. I drop my kids off every day at school, and one of the things I've noticed is that there is a path that is a 90-degree sort of angle of like everybody walks here and then over here. But realistically, what happens is there's a dirt path now that kind of curves, and it's like you can have the greatest plan, but if the customer doesn't want to use it, then it's not super effective. So I love your city planner analogy. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there is a lot going on right now out in the world of customer service. With respect to AI, you've probably seen the product change. You've probably are starting to see the customer service industry change. How do you see where Zendesk is now? And where do you see, and what do you think is coming next? What are you excited about? Obviously you can't share things that you can't share, but what are you excited about? Where do you think things are going?
Well, I would say, to talk about what, where things are going, I want to talk about where we come from. So, when I joined back in 2015, again, we were really about, providing this beautiful, simple experience and encouraging people to self-serve through knowledge base and community forums, and just connecting them with support agents quickly. But the customer service channels were very limited. It was phone, email, live chat was on the rise in some industries like retail, but that was it. And then something happened, and it became all about omni-channel, about meeting the customer wherever they were. And customers were dictating the rules of engagement, and companies had to adapt and to create a beautiful, simple experience on those channels. And now most customers are on messaging, right? Social messaging apps, right. WhatsApp, Facebook messengers, they've completely changed the way we communicate with our friends and family. We communicate our feelings through emojis and so on. And even at work, right? We use Slack, we use Teams, and we put thumbs up when a coworker sends us a message and so on. So again, companies had to quickly adapt to the changing customer needs and to adopt messaging.
It's funny to think about. I wonder, whether it's like my kids, if they did a customer service role, or their experience in the future, it's not going to be like at the end of the ticket, hey, have we resolved everything and how can we help you more? It's just like they just send a thumbs up, like, hey, thank you, that's it, and then they just move on.
Yeah, and they
Pretty
probably won't
interesting.
even use the thumb up anymore. They'll use like some weird emoji that they find is the equivalent of it, right? So
Yeah, it's very true. That's very true. I think I've seen some stuff on Twitter where it's like there's almost a glossary of what emojis are and how they fit into the current generation, and I'm like, what? What does that even mean? That's crazy.
yeah, they've completely corrupted the initial meaning of each emojis and made it their own. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and then how about, where are you seeing things like AI fit into this development?
Yeah, so now, we've completely entered the AI era, and I think it's impacted all aspects of our work and our lives, and particularly in customer service. Because it has many applications. It makes companies' information and knowledge much more accessible and consumable by the customer, and it also allows for a higher service of automation, because AI agents, they are able to understand what you want, and they're able to respond, and they're even able to take action. So things that you might have had a human agent do in the past, like checking the status of an order or changing your address, the AI agent can do it for you. But it also empowers support agents to work much faster. The AI gives them insights about what your issue as a customer is and what are the steps to solve it. And they can even tell you if the customer is angry or if he's frustrated. So all of this empowers the support agent to really deliver more personalized responses.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've loved about this sort of future of customer-facing conversations, especially in a world of AI, is that there's just, I mean, I've done thousands, tens of thousands of customer support tickets myself in Zendesk, and there is just so much that gets in there that probably doesn't need to ever be seen by a human person, and it slows them down. It makes them feel depressed and sad and tired. And I think as we can say, all right, that stuff can be automatically handled. Maybe some tickets, like for example, we get a lot of like, hey, would you like to do SEO and link posts? Okay, that goes to marketing.
Mhm.
Sales conversations, maybe it could automatically go to sales. But from like you mentioned, and then similarly, all these sorts of conversations around like, can you help me refund or cancel or unsubscribe from an email? All that stuff, I think it allows our support team to be the best version of themselves and provide the best customer service, which I am personally excited about, because I'm tired of a lot of companies providing bad customer service. Um, I imagine you guys probably have to educate a lot of people on like what is good and what is bad and provide benchmarks and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, and it's often a journey, right? So and it's interesting because from a platform point of view, all those opportunities to make agents more productive and to automate more, they create challenges as well, because AI agents have to be able to talk to your systems, to talk to your order management, to say, hey, this is when your order is going to arrive, or and so on and so on. So it increases the gap between digital native companies whose their back office systems are in the cloud and they can be very easily integrated, versus older companies who have to go through a more transformational change for them to get there. So the opportunities are not the same for every company, but it's a journey.
There's a couple other really interesting things I think about generative AI that I'd love to get your perspective on. So for example, I know you kind of just mentioned it just now. It's like you can take a customer support agent and make them the best version of themselves. The other side of it too is one thing that I've noticed is that we're always spending a lot of time updating documentation, making it better, making it clearer, so that either the bots that we use or the people on our team can send those documents, and people can basically help self-serve. How do you see like helping these agents, helping these admins do more, be better, and not have to spend so much time in the weeds?
Mhm. Yeah, so there are lots of opportunities there too. One thing that we've been doing for a while is we have been suggesting admins to either update or create new knowledge base articles based on an AI assessment of their tickets. So basically, we look at all the questions, all the queries that they receive, and we check if their knowledge base has gaps. And we suggest, admins ways to bridge those gaps. And then, sorry.
Okay. No, you go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, and this is less around generative AI and more around, machine learning and but then when they go and write those articles, we have generative AI options for them to expand or change the tone of the article, or just use all those great features to facilitate the creation of content.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Are you seeing also, sort of like now that it's easier to create and maintain this content, that admins are, I guess, clearer on the problem areas within their documentation of their tickets, as opposed to I get 500 tickets, I'm not sure what's going on? Presumably, it's much easier to synthesize the data now, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And it's also, when we think about kind of knowledge-centered support, it's not as much about let's think about everything that the customer might ask and create a massive knowledge base, but rather iterate using those tools. So start small and then write more and more articles as you see them needed because you're analyzing your queries in real time. So it's really interesting, I think, to be a knowledge-based content manager today.
I think that totally makes sense. One of the things that, I grew up in the East Coast in New Jersey, New York area. And when I moved to Silicon Valley, I think this sort of mantra of like, big impact, focus on the impact, focus on the, 20% of the things that are going to be the most impactful, most important. And I think sometimes, when I talk with our customer support team, they're like, we're going to spend a quarter updating every landing page, every customer support doc page. And I talk with our team, and I'm like, let's look at the data. Let's see which ones are the most viewed. Let's make sure those pages are amazing and beautiful. And then let's iterate on them again, because otherwise it can feel like you're just doing the same thing over and over, but at huge scale, and you come out exhausted. So I think that's a great point about, focusing on and iterating. I'd love to know, we've talked about your career in kind of Zendesk and some of the products you've worked on and built, your customers, but I'd love to know a little bit more about you personally. There's sort of two things that I, in reading about your background, that I was curious about. One of them was I've never been to the Mojave National Preserve. Can you tell me about that experience? Your this road trip that was pretty epic, it sounded like, and what did you love about it?
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredible trip, a very ambitious one as well, because we started in Los Angeles and we had a goal to go to cross the country to Boston, and we had 12 days to complete the trip.
Oh my gosh, that's a serious commitment.
Yeah, it was a pretty serious commitment. We were starting a semester in Boston, so that gave the opportunity. So it was really a great trip, and as there are many stories that I can't say on a podcast, but the one about the Mojave Desert is interesting, because we were on our way to Las Vegas, and we decided to take this little detour through the Mojave National Preserve to see the beautiful desert landscape. Right, it's amazing, and we don't have those kind of landscapes in France, I can tell you. So it's so we drove there, we stopped to take pictures, and when we tried to leave, the car wouldn't start. It was an old car that we bought relatively cheaply, and we were really inexperienced drivers, so we had kept the AC going all the way from Los Angeles to this place. So it was obviously overheated. And we were stranded there with nothing but probably a bottle of vodka and one of those massive big gulps that you buy at 7-Eleven. That was full of soda, no water whatsoever. So so we panicked a little bit, but eventually the engine chilled down and we got it started again. And we ended up rolling into Las Vegas at the sunset. So I guess that was was a good experience in the end.
Oh, that's great. I've actually read about quite a few. Obviously, the number is quite low, but um, particularly in Utah and in Nevada and some of these states nearby that have big deserts, it's very common for folks from Europe to come over and then just go on a hike and then basically have to have like a helicopter come rescue them because they didn't really appreciate how hot and how much water they needed. And anyway, like I like the takeaway for your car. It's basically, being prepared. But it's funny that when I think about your drive from Boston to LA, like that is, I've done it myself a few times, and
Yeah.
it's like 3-4. If you drove every day and just almost spent the entire day, it could take 3 or 4 days alone. So yeah, it's a huge commitment. Okay, and then the other one I wanted to ask you about is playing. I have an 11-year-old who loves playing volleyball,
Oh yeah.
and so yeah, I've never talked to a professional, or a collegiate volleyball player before. So tell me about your collegiate volleyball experience. It's super cool.
Yeah, so I don't think professional is maybe an overstatement, but
Sure, sorry.
but I did play from early on all the way to uni, and no, it was great. A great competitive sports, always a always great thing to do. And one thing that I didn't realize, playing volleyball, but I realized later on is I've always been good at moving on. I'm not one to dwell too long on a loss or a mistake or a failure. In fact, I have very bad memory when it comes to events. I remember technical documentation much better, which sometimes serves me right, sometimes not. And it's funny because I was watching Ted Lasso recently. I don't know if you've watched it.
Perfect show. It's one of my favorite shows. I love it.
Yeah. So one thing that resonated with me is
I actually have, like, right here on my wall. I have very few things on my walls, but I have the sign that says "Believe" right next to me.
no way. That's amazing. So his big mantra is be a goldfish, and the way this applies to my work as well is.
Hey, and actually, before you move on to how it applies, will you just share a little nugget on what the goldfish means, just in case anybody hasn't seen it or doesn't know what it means?
Oh yeah, of course. Sorry. So be a goldfish basically refers to the fact that the goldfish supposedly doesn't have a long-term memory, so they forget pretty much whatever happened. And I think it's applied here to say don't dwell on your mistakes and just look forward and move on, right?
Yeah. I think that's a great way to look at it, especially knowing. I mean, I think that's advice that I would tend to agree with. Sometimes it's so easy to hold on to these stupid problems or mistakes you made, but if you just let it go, you can. So okay, so like playing, like what is the training like? How often are you playing? Are you traveling a lot? I can't tell from how you're sitting, but are you a tall guy? What's your vertical? I have so many questions.
So I'm probably the shortest volleyball player you've ever seen.
Okay.
I'm not a tall guy. I wouldn't be able to translate it into feet and inches, but probably like 170 meter.
Okay.
But I'm a short guy, but I play pass. So I'm usually in the middle, passing to the tall guys who are actually shooting the ball over the whatever it's called in English.
The net.
The nets. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Oh, interesting. Okay. And so let's see. ChatGPT is so funny. I'm like, I ask it a question. Sometimes it's like really great, and then I'll ask it a question, and it's like other times I'm like, oh, that's not even close. I asked how tall you were, and it said 557 feet and 8.91 inches. So that's maybe I prompted it wrong. That's probably what happened.
No, I said it wrong. It's 170 centimeters.
Oh, it's centimeters. Of course. Yeah. That totally makes sense. A meter is huge, right?
It's on me. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay, and then I have two other questions for you. One is a little bit about sort of the future of your kind of career, but you've lived in some great places, and how have some of these cities, these cultures, impacted your work style, or how you feel about work, or the work that you accomplish? Does the environment change you, or are you pretty consistent wherever you are? and what do you get excited about as a result of maybe where you are?
Well, I think I'm more. Well, I've been very lucky to have the opportunity to live on three continents, actually: North America, Europe, of course, and Asia also for a little bit. And I mean, it's interesting to see the differences in culture and how it drives the way people work and live, and also the tech and innovation, right? So because it's always about trying to solve people's problem, and they're not the same whether you're on one part of the world or another. So I think I'm always trying to keep that in mind whenever I talk to someone, and adapt the way my discourse and my level of sometimes technical speech, depending on the people that are in front of me, and try to adapt to their culture as well.
Is there other technologies that you remember seeing and being kind of surprised? So for example, like I have some friends who work for DoorDash in San Francisco, and one conversation I was very surprised by is he told me that one of the most popular brands and products that people use for DoorDash is actually McDonald's. And I was surprised. I was blown away. I'm like, people are getting McDonald's delivered to their house.
Mm.
Sometimes I guess I'm a little disconnected, but anyway. So how about you? Do you remember seeing Uber or some of these products and technologies throughout the countries that you were living in, either ahead or sort of slow or maybe delayed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in 2009, I was living in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia, and I was actually already seeing those food delivery apps. It wasn't DoorDash, but it was something regional, and seeing those delivery apps that could deliver any restaurants that you wanted, and especially McDonald's. Actually, I think McDonald's had their own delivery service, which was not available in France. None of this was available in France. But I think it was very common there because there was a takeaway culture. People were working a bit later. Restaurant food was being cheaper. To be honest, I think the workforce, the delivery people, salaries were probably less as well. So that made the environment a good environment to have this kind of technology, where it would have failed in other countries.
I think another area, and I'd love to hear your perspective on, is just sort of like, there's a couple different people that I read on Twitter. One of them is a developer. I think his name, at least I think his name is Peter Levels, and he talks about, he basically roams around the world, lives in different countries, creates new products, and he highlights how certain countries maybe don't have air conditioning as much as others do, and so maybe those people are just hot and unhappy. Or, for example, I think we see this frequently, that I think sometimes the US can feel and be a little bit more like a cowboy who's just sort of like, hey, let's release and launch products very fast and then Europe is sort of more measured and careful. Maybe you've seen some of those impacts to the products you've worked on or built. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, of course. I mean, as you said, the US is the land of opportunities, right? So, and that's why I don't know if you know this, but Zendesk is a Danish company. So it was created by three Danish guys, but they
That makes
actually
sense now that I think about it, because the default template for the help center is Copenhagen, I think, right?
exactly, yeah, good
Okay.
spot. Absolutely. But they actually a couple of years after creating the company, they moved to the US to have it incorporated, because that's where the market was, and that's because I think American people are faster to adopt those kind of new technologies than us in Europe. But yeah, Europe in general, and France and Germany in particular, we're very strict about things like data privacy and protection. So that leads to regulations that can sometimes slow technology down, right?
Right.
Maybe for good. I'm not the one to judge, but I think you mentioned you worked at Facebook, so I think that's what slowed down the rollout of Meta AI in Europe, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think even while, so I've been, out of Facebook for probably 8 years, but Facebook is always running into, all right, we launched this product, and then India is like, I don't know about that, or in Europe or specific countries. But yeah, like you said, probably for good in many cases. I think it's obviously it's helpful to think about all the details there. Okay, last question for you, and then I'll let you go. But you're working at a great company. You've been there a while. What are some of the things? Maybe you have some personal goals or some of the opportunities you look at internally, or even some of the jobs that you'd like to try within the business at Zendesk. What are some of the things that you're hoping to do, hoping to see, hoping to experience going forward in your career?
Well, so I've been at Zendesk for almost 10 years, as you mentioned, as an individual contributor. So I'm really curious about moving to a lead or a management position. I've had the opportunity in the past to do some mentoring, and I really liked it. And I also would like to be able to have a more impact on the business and on my team to to influence the way we work and influence the way we impact the business, basically.
Totally makes sense. And I think that's a pretty common thing, right? Like, it's in some ways one of those, maybe the grass is greener, or you just don't know how the grass feels yet. And maybe like I actually had a lot of experiences with people at Facebook who were leaders who were like, I'm tired of this. I just want to go write code, or I want to go sell, or I want to go work in the field. Well, anyway, Roma, it's been awesome talking to you. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me today on our Zight podcast.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.